Hello, my name is Harold Dalton. Welcome to Reset. We're in the book of Acts. So if you have a Bible there close by, open your Bible, have a notepad, a pencil, and let me just give you a few things to think about this week. Last week, our lesson covered chapters 20 and 21. I want to just say a couple of things at the end of chapter 21, which sets us up for the lesson in chapter 22 and 23. It Toward the end of chapter 21, actually, it was chapter 19 and verse 21, where the Apostle Paul is in the city of Ephesus, and he's telling the people there he is headed to Jerusalem. So he has started a long journey, which will take him from Ephesus down to Jerusalem, which is a long journey, and then from Jerusalem all the way to Rome. That journey, he doesn't know it at the time, but that journey is going to take him about 2.5 years to accomplish that one part of his journey. So he leaves Ephesus, he makes that trip down to Jerusalem. It's the time of the Feast of Pentecost. When he arrives in Jerusalem, he meets friends, the leaders of the church there in Jerusalem. It says they welcomed him gladly. And so, after a little time of fellowship, he goes to the temple. This is a festival time, so there are huge crowds in Jerusalem. And he goes to the temple several days. The festival lasts for a week. And as the days go on, people start recognizing him. And so the Jewish leaders, the fundamental leaders of the Jewish religion, they do not like the Apostle Paul, because they consider him to be someone who is destroying their religion. Various things he's doing, but the most crucial is he's bringing in Gentiles. And so that just goes against everything that they have lived for all these hundreds of years. So when they see him in the temple, they start a demonstration. This turns into just a full-fledged riot. So at the end of chapter 21, there is so much commotion going on. The people want to take Paul out in the street and kill him, start stoning him right there. So the Roman leader there takes matters into his own hands. He goes and arrests the Apostle Paul, primarily for his own protection and also to calm down the riot. Now, as a Roman leader, he's called the commander of the military force that's stationed there in Jerusalem. They're Greeks, they're Romans. They have no interest in the Jewish religion, no interest in the Christian religion. They are political appointees. They're there to keep the peace. So that's the only thing they're really concerned with. So anyway, chapter 21 ends with the Apostle Paul in custody, the people at a fever pitch of, we have to kill this man. He is a danger to our religion. So, starting with chapter 22, Paul asked the commander, can he speak to this crowd? He thinks maybe he can reason with them and calm them down a little bit. And so the commander gives him permission to speak to the crowd. So he's brought out, he stands on a porch there, and this mob of people are out there in front of him. And the commander asks for everyone's attention. They get quiet, and Paul starts speaking. Interesting. The first thing that he does is give his personal testimony. 21 verses. That's Acts chapter 22. The first 21 verses is the Apostle Paul just recounting his testimony. This is what happened to me. This is how I met Jesus. Goes back, remember in chapter 9 of Acts is the story of his conversion. He's on the road to Damascus. You remember that story. Very dramatic. He recounts that whole story. Actually, that story is told 3 times in the book of Acts. In chapter 9, when it first happened, right here in chapter 22, and then again in chapter 26. So 3 times The Apostle Paul tells that story of his conversion on the road to Damascus. So he tells the story, people listen to him, and he comes down to this point. If you look at verse 21, this is in chapter 22, verse 21, he says, "The Lord spoke to me and said, 'Depart, for I will send you from here to the Gentiles.'" The minute he mentions that word Gentiles, that's like the flashpoint. I mean, that is like the one word that throws a match into the fire. I mean, it just blew up. And when he says Gentile, they just forgot about everything he had said up to that point, and that just proved the whole thing. He wants to bring Gentiles into our religion. He's destroying the Jewish faith, and they were bound and determined at this point to grab him and kill him, drag him out in the street, and stone him to death. Well, once again, the commander takes charge. He's the military leader. He's the one that has the soldiers with him. And so he goes out into the crowd, takes Paul into his custody, and takes him inside the barracks where he could be safe. And it's really interesting here. He's locked up, he's in prison, but he's safe. If he were outside at that point, he risked being killed. So anyway, it's just an interesting little turn of events there. Okay, so then we go to chapter 23. Now the Jewish leaders come to this commander, and they said, okay, this is a religious matter. This man should be turned over to our authority. We will determine what should be done to this man. And so the commander says, you can have a hearing. This is going to be done orderly and properly and all of that, but you can have a hearing. So the high priest, the Sanhedrin, the Jewish leaders, they all come together, and the commander brings the Apostle Paul in. Okay, you can now question this man. You can examine him according to your own law. And so the first part of chapter 23, the first 9 verses just tells you about that. He had no sooner gotten started until again a riot breaks out, and they are ready to kill the Apostle Paul right there on the spot. The commander takes him back into custody, takes him back inside the barracks, again locks him up where he will be safe from the crowd. Verse 11, chapter 23, verse 11, look at this. "But the following night the Lord stood by the Apostle Paul and said," listen to this, this is the Lord speaking to him, "Be of good cheer, Paul, for as you have testified for me in Jerusalem, you must also bear witness in Rome." Interesting. That little message from the Lord right there carried Paul for the next 2.5 years. 2 years of that mostly locked up in prison. The journey from when he finally leaves on the voyage to Rome was a long, torturous journey. There were storms. You'll hear about that a little bit later in the book of Acts. But anyway, it was a long journey. Many times, several times during that trip, his life was at stake. They thought the ship was going to sink. They thought they would be killed. Paul never lost that message that God gave him right here in the barracks in Jerusalem. You must also bear witness in Rome. He held on to that. No matter what happens, no matter how bad it looks, God has told me that I will preach in Rome. And he held on to that. Never lost it. Fantastic. One last thing before we leave chapter 23. The governor of this area was a man by the name of Felix. So the commander down in Jerusalem, it was such a volatile situation, he said, I'm going to send him to Caesarea. Now, Caesarea was a place that had a lot of Romans, had a lot of Greeks. It was a place where full military contingent was. So the Apostle Paul could be safe there. So they transfer him from Jerusalem to Caesarea. And that's where he stays locked up for the next 2 years. Now, in all of these 2 chapters, there are 2 or 3 things I want you to remember and think about when you reflect on this lesson today and this reset. Number 1, we started off with the Apostle Paul giving his testimony. There is no witness more powerful than your personal testimony, telling what Jesus Christ has done for you. You can talk about philosophy and theology and history and, all kinds of subjects. But the most powerful thing you can talk about is what Jesus Christ has done in your life. How have you been changed? How has he answered your prayers? And that's what the Apostle Paul comes back to. I'm preaching to you because of what Jesus has done in my life. Don't forget that. That is very important today. It's important for you and for me. Give that testimony. Share what Jesus Christ has done for you. Then a couple of other things. Listen to this little statement. Obeying God can be dangerous. The Apostle Paul is a great example of that. He faced persecution. He faced rioting crowds that wanted to kill him. He was beaten. He was hungry. He suffered on a number of occasions. Actually, on that trip from Ephesus down to Jerusalem, he was warned, don't go to Jerusalem because persecution awaits you there. And he said, this is what God has told me to do. And if I suffer, so be it. I will pay the price to do what God has called me to do. So sometimes your obedience to the Lord will result in some suffering. Could be persecution. It could be people that give you bad advice. It could be people that react out of fear of what you're going to do. Sometimes it's just plain old jealousy. People see what God has done in your life and they're jealous. So, obeying God can be dangerous. A couple of other things. Nothing compares to the power of a personal relationship from Jesus Christ. That night when the Apostle Paul is sitting in that prison in Jerusalem and the Lord appears to him and gives him that assurance, I will send you to the Gentiles. I will send you to Rome. He never lost sight of that. The word of the Lord that speaks right into your heart and gives you the assurance that the Lord is with you. Don't ever lose sight of that. And then just a couple of other things. The people that the Lord used to help Paul. Starting out with that Roman military man in Jerusalem. He was in charge of just that city, Jerusalem, to keep the peace. But he is the one that takes the Apostle Paul into custody for his own protection so that he doesn't get stoned to death. When he's in Caesarea, the governor there, the governor is named Felix. He locks Paul up in prison. He said there's a procedure that we have to go through here. He's appealed to Rome. This is going to take some time. And then he issued this order. Give him some privileges. Let his friends visit and provide for him. That's chapter 24, verse 23. So here's God using these Roman officials who are not Christians. They're not Jews. They are probably idol worshipers. They're Greeks. They're Romans. But God uses them to protect the Apostle Paul. That same thing can happen to you. The Lord can bring people into your life that you would never expect to be a blessing to you. But the Lord uses that. He's in control of our life. We trust him because we know he has our best at heart. God bless you as you think on these things this week.